RPGs is one of the most popular genres on the Nintendo console right now, with a lot of them being from a lot of indie games or third-party titles. But Nintendo is not familiar with putting RPGs of their own, like Pokemon for example. But before all that, Mario had a lot of RPGs under Nintendo's belt over the years. Before he had RPG games released by Ubisoft, Intelligent Systems, or Alpha Dream, there was a little company around that time called Square Enix, who pretty much made the seeds of Mario RPGs going forward. The development for this game is very fascinating looking back. A lot of ideas went left and right, with one of them being from Square Enix, where they wanted a very traditional RPG starring Mario. To the point where they originally had the idea of having Mario running on horseback, wielding a sword as his main weapon. However, Nintendo didn't really think that idea fit really well for Mario, so instead his main weapon would have been the hammer. And as the development went by, they eventually finally released the game in 1996 and received universal acclaim when it first released. Which is honestly a good thing considering that this is the final Super Nintendo game starring Mario, so it's good to know that Mario went out with a bang for this console, instead of some weird, shoddy educational spin-off. But anyway, so since Super Mario RPG was a hit, you expect them to go forward with future sequels. And originally they did, but around this time, this is when Nintendo and Square had a big falling out. And so, instead of making a direct sequel to Super Mario RPG, they went on to make a spiritual successor to the series, with two series in fact, one being Paper Mario, and the other one being Mario & Luigi, with the latter being a bit more direct with Super Mario RPG, due to the fact that the developers who worked on the original game went on to work at Alpha Dream. However, eventually when we get to the Switch, Mario & RPGs sort of went on for a bit of a hiatus. There was the Mario & Rabbids game, which are pretty cool tactical RPGs, with Sparks of Hope being the best because it has Rayman and such. But these games are a bit more different compared to the regular Mario RPGs we usually get, which are more turn-based. However, starting with June of this year, Nintendo released a bombshell that they were going back to Mario's RPG roots by remaking Super Mario RPG for the Nintendo Switch. And as for my personal history with this game, I grew up playing Super Mario RPG with the Wii Virtual Console at the time. And honestly, I really enjoyed it. It was really a fun little game, and honestly, it was really cool looking back. And as the years go by, I eventually got myself an original copy of the game, so fuck you, eBay. So I was very excited to see this remake actually happen. And once I bought it at the store, it was honestly the most surreal thing about this game for me, is that the fact that this actually exists, because like, this is something you would see in like a fan idea, like you would see on DeviantArt for a mock-up or something. But to see this actually happen is honestly really crazy. If only I have one gripe about this, is probably the box art for the game. Because honestly I feel like this box art is a bit too empty feeling. I get it's a nice little callback to the Super Famicom version of the box art, but at the same time, it doesn't really automatically make this a good box art since it's a callback. I feel like a box art that has like a white background could work. I mean, I feel like Mario & Luigi did it a bit better. But for Mario RPG, it kinda looks like something you would put in Blender. But honestly, I'm not really that bothered about it. And I should also mention is that for this video, I'm going to be using the remake for most of the footage, although I did record some of the original Super Nintendo game. I was actually brainstorming on what should I do, and honestly, since the remake is on people's minds for the most part, I'm going to lean more to the remake since it's essentially the same game, but it just looks really nice. However, if you want to go in surprise on how the upgraded visuals look, I'd say probably skip the video. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So the game starts with Princess Peach enjoying a nice sunny day, enjoying the flowers and the scenery, when Bowser suddenly kidnaps her, and Mario needs to go save her. Essentially the same shindig you would know for every Mario game, but things get really different once Mario was able to save Peach, when suddenly a giant sword in the air crashes into Bowser's castle and flings everyone out of it. Mario lands conveniently straight into his house through his poor pipe chimney. Confused, Mario decides to go back to Bowser's castle to see what's up, and this is when he realized that a giant sentient sword is taking over his castle. This is Exor, a giant sword who is the bridge between a different world owned by Smithy, a warlord that's trying to take over the Mushroom Kingdom. And to make sure that no one gets in their way, Exor destroys the bridge for Bowser's castle, essentially preventing Mario from entering it. Mario then heads to the Mushroom Kingdom to warn the people about the coming danger. Not sure what to do, Mario then leaves the castle area, only to find a mysterious cloud creature getting robbed by this crocodile thing. Mario decides to help this little guy who is named Mallow, a mysterious little creature who is claimed to be a frog. As Mario and Mallow try to get Mallow's money back, Mushroom Kingdom eventually gets attacked by Smithy's gang, where Mario eventually defeats the head of the attack and finds this mysterious star. With the star in hand, Mallow had the idea of asking his grandfather advice because he seems to know stuff about this. As they head to Tadpole Pond, Frog Fuchsia's, the sage of the frog ponds, tells Mario and Mallow that they must find the 7 stars to restore order to the Mushroom Kingdom. And by no one's surprise, Frog Fuchsia's also stated that Mallow is not really a frog, but someone that he adopted after being separated from his parents. No way! It's almost like Mallow does not look like a frog at all. This honestly gives me PTSD of Legend of Spyro. If you know, you know. So yeah, that's pretty much the basic plot of Super Mario RPG, and overall, while it's a very simple plot, it is still very entertaining throughout. It is also pretty funny as well. That's the one thing I really like about the Mario RPG games, is that while they're not really serious for the most part, they are pretty funny, especially with the Mario and Luigi games. Especially with the characters you meet along the way. As Mario and Mallow head to Rose Town, they stop by a little inn area where Mario plays with this little kid with this mysterious little Geno doll. And for a small little toy, it really packs the punch, as once he shoots a little thing out of the Geno doll, Mario went out cold for the night. Later that night, a mysterious little star enters the area, where he possesses the doll, and the doll comes to life. This mysterious incident leads Mario into the Forest Maze, one of the most iconic areas of the game. Mario helps Geno defeat the attacker of the small town nearby. Now, technically speaking, Geno as a character isn't really the doll itself, but the star that's possessing the doll. However, since the star's actual name is very hard to pronounce, he decides to keep the name Geno to make things easier. But since Geno serves the stars in the sky, he is able to tell Mario full context of what's going on about the stars. So basically what happened is that when Smithy started attacking the Mushroom Kingdom, he also shattered the Star Road, which is the essential thing for people to make wishes. And so with Star Road shatter, people were unable to make wishes. This pretty much gives them more reason why to get all the 7 stars. But they're not going alone because even Bowser joins them eventually, so that he can get his castle back. Not only that, but also Peach is around the area too, getting captured by this little thing called Booster. And honestly, he's probably one of my favorite characters in this game because he's just so funny and stupid. And with the remake graphics, he looks even more derpy than usual, which is so funny. Like, his entire reasoning is that he was trying to marry Peach, but at the same time, he doesn't really want to marry Peach. All he wanted was the wedding cake. So after a really hilarious chase section and that, the entire party for this venture is complete. So it's up to them to stop Smithy and gather up the 7 stars. This plot is not really very deep, but there's a lot of things going on throughout the adventure. As you'll meet a lot of very charming characters throughout. As I mentioned earlier with Booster, there's this cool area of a sunken ship where you meet these pirate dudes, and a lot of other stuff. You even visit other locations that don't have anything to do with the actual story, like in Yoshi's Island, or Yoster Island. This is where you get to meet one of the more interesting obscure Mario characters, Boshi. Boshi is pretty much the equivalent of a Wario Yoshi. And also like in the remake, they give Boshi the usual Yoshi voice, but way deeper than usual. And of course, I cannot be talking about the characters in Yoster Island without talking about him. So in this area, you'll find yourself with a baby little Yoshi, where you can feed him a lot of Yoshi cookies repeatedly, and eventually, once you re-enter the area, he turns into Big Yoshi! I believe in Big Yoshi. But anyway, so for the gameplay. Just like in other RPG titles for the Mario series, it's divided into 2 structures, the overworld and the battle sections. The overworld is pretty much a blend between a traditional RPG thing and a Mario game. And considering the fact that this game was used to capitalize on the trend of Donkey Kong Country by using pre-rendered 3D graphics, it's somewhat kind of like an isometric 3D platformer in a way. It's also very easy to avoid enemies or fun enemies in the overworld, so if you want to get some experience points, it's very easy to do so. There's also some sections where you will be doing some traditional Mario platforming, although I gotta say, these are probably the weakest part of the game for me. For the most part, it's very simple to jump around the areas and it is fun somewhat, but when they try to be very precise like this section right here, it does get a bit frustrating. But besides that, exploration is key throughout the areas. The settings in this game is a bit more on the traditional side for Mario, like there's a lot of grass areas, there's a desert area, and there's a seaside area. But what makes up for them is that they all have a lot of distinct personalities and such. That really feels like you're exploring an actual world in the Mario series. The structure in these areas can be very interesting and challenging. Like in one area, you're going through these different pipes trying to figure out which way is the right path. And of course, the most iconic part of the entire game, you're trying to go through this mysterious maze where you're trying to find Gino, who just suddenly walked out. One of the main areas you'll be exploring through are these small gauntlet areas where you're trying to duke out a lot of enemies, trying to find your way up to the area and to defeat the boss fight. These can be really cool, like in the sunken ship area, you're going through these different trails to figure out the right passcode. In Booster's Tower, you're climbing up this entire tower area just so you can save Peach from Booster. And sometimes we're exploring and you're trying to hit the blocks, you eventually find yourself with a superstar, and once Mario can do this, he can kill any enemy on sight with instant, and you get experience points with it. And of course, since this is an RPG, you have a lot of town areas to explore as well. You have the shops to buy armor, weapons, and items and such, you have the special inn area so you can restore your health, and you have a save log, but saying that this is Remake and has audio saving, it's mostly for old time's sakes. And lastly, we have one of the big elements in the game, the minigames. So throughout the game, Mario will eventually find himself in these certain little set pieces where he has to do a little minigame. The first one is Mario exploring this underground area where he finds himself falling through a waterfall. While Mario falls to his death, he finds himself trying to catch as much coins as he can, and he goes through these small cave areas which honestly looks very beautiful in the remake. Eventually when he gets to the ground, he's riding on barrels trying to dodge as many Cheep Cheeps as he can and how much coins he can get. The second one I could think of is that you're driving through this minecart area, trying to steer through the right tracks and make sure you not fall off the area. There's even this small little side-scrolling area where it becomes straight up Donkey Kong Country. And the last two minigames I want to talk about are the booster ones. The first minigame is Mario trying to hide from Booster by going behind the curtains, and with Booster, he lost one of his dolls, so he's asking the people to go find them behind the curtains. So now it's this frantic race of not getting spotted once they open the curtains. And the second one is that Booster has Peach, and they're trying to get to the wedding area so Booster can have a cake. And the funniest thing too is that Booster had no idea that Mario's after him for kidnapping Peach. He doesn't even know he's actually kidnapping Peach. Like, oh god, this idiot. But anyway, so you're chasing Booster up this hill while barrels fall down the hill, and you're trying to dodge the Shy Guys as well. If you jump off the Shy Guys, you get lunge up ahead, and if you go near Peach, she'll give you a bonus. Honestly, my favorite minigame in Mario RPG because how much frantic this is. And that's not even talking about the other challenge you can find, like the one in Yoshi's Island, for example. So there's a great amount of variety in the adventure you'll be going on. However, that's just the first part of the gameplay. Since this is an RPG, the second gameplay is the RPG's battle system. You have 5 party members to play through, but you have to have 3 in battle, with one of them being Mario in particular. All 5 of these characters have their unique attributes. Of course, with Mario, he's the all-rounder character who has a bunch of equal stats for each of the class. Mallow is great for taking out a bunch of characters at once with his special abilities. His physical attacks are pretty weak, but he makes up for it for having high level of defense, and he's pretty good with magic spells. Gino is pretty damn powerful, however he's pretty much the equivalent of a glass cannon, where he has a great variety of offensive attacks, both physical and magic, but the cost of it is that he has pretty below average defense. And as for Bowser, well, he has pretty good physical attacks, but for his special attacks, they are pretty weak. Well, for the most part, because when it gets to the later ones, he does get a bit better. And lastly, we have Peach, who is pretty much the healer of the group, and she is surprisingly pretty broken. She has a special move where Peach can restore everyone's health instantly all at once. And it does not use any flower points, so it's pretty much easy to cheese through the game, especially with the laser show where you're probably never gonna die. Because of this, I don't really use Peach that much in case it's a really big emergency, like I'm at low health and such. They also added a new feature in the remake where you can swap party members during battle, and you don't lose a turn because of it. Now, for what I've said about the battle system throughout this video, it's pretty much the traditional battle system you'd see in most RPGs, but there's one thing that makes it a bit more distinct, which became a big staple in the Mario RPG series going forward with both Paper Mario and the Mario & Luigi series. You can just simply select your attack and see it in motion, but if you time your buttons correctly, you can do a lot more damage what you could do by just letting it go by. Even guarding is interesting here because you can just block attacks easily, but if you time it just correctly, you can take no damage at all. And these are one of the main reasons why I always prefer the Mario RPG games compared to other traditional RPGs, because with something that is very simple as time hits, it makes me a lot more focused on battles compared to something like Pokemon, where I just select a move and see the bar go down. With the time hits in Mario RPG, it makes me really feel like I'm actually attacking an enemy on the battlefield. And with that, I think I should also mention the brand new features that the remake in particular adds to the game, where if you do a consistent time hit, you'll get a combo chain on the left side where the more consistent you are, the higher stat boosts you will get, which makes this a better incentive to try and make sure you get the time hits correctly. And lastly about the time hits is that they also added additional splash damage to the enemies nearby. And honestly, even though I do love the battle system gameplay-wise, it is pretty damn easy. But luckily, with this remake, they also have a brand new difficulty option, where if you find the game too easy, you can add additional hard mode to it. Which I would be saying, if it wasn't for the fact that instead of a hard mode, the new difficulty setting is to make the game even easier than usual. Oh my god, why does Nintendo always add these stupidly easy modes to their games? And at worst, it does affect certain aspects of the gameplay, like the playable select screen in Mario Wonder, for example. And I know Nintendo tries to make Mario a bit more user-friendly for a lot of casual players, but I feel like at times it's a bit detrimental to Mario. Like, I know Mario's for kids, but at the same time, series like Donkey Kong and Crash Bandicoot, and even the older Mario games are for kids as well, and they never really hold your hand that much. But on the bright side, I feel like the bosses in these games were pretty cool for the most part. I also like how in the remake they added a brand new animation when they introduced them. Something simple as that comes a long way. And lastly, there is one final thing that the remake adds, which is the special triple move. And it's pretty much what you expect. There's a special gauge in the bottom left where if it fills up, you can do a really special attack with all 3 party members. And the coolest thing is that there's individual special move depending on which party you have on the field, but also, it shows a pre-rendered cutscene of them doing the move. That's a level of detail I really love in this game. And with that, I think I should talk about the presentation of this game. Now, graphically for the Super Nintendo version, I do like it aesthetically, and they were really trying to make this a really big game. In fact, they have one of those special modded chips for the Super Nintendo cartridge. Similar to the Super FX chip, but this was used for a different reason. But honestly, I do feel like this game is a tad outdated graphically. The game was going for an isometric 3x3 graphical look, similar to Donkey Kong Country, but honestly, I feel like Donkey Kong Country 1 through 3 aged a lot better than Mario RPG. But I cannot say the same about the soundtrack, because honestly, the soundtrack in this game holds up really well. It was composed by Yoko Shimomura, which was her first ever Mario game to compose for. And after this game, she eventually composed the entirety of the Mario & Luigi series, and the Kingdom Hearts series. And her style for music really fits Mario very well for its bouncy, upbeat tunes. And as for the remake, holy shit, this game looks phenomenal! I know these days a lot of people laugh at the Nintendo Switch for its outdated hardware, but honestly, this and Pikmin 4 were the first time in a really long time that I was really impressed by the graphics of a Nintendo game. Now, on a personal level, I think Super Mario Bros. Wonder looks the best graphically, but that's a 2D game compared to a 3D game that Mario RPG and Pikmin 4 are. And I'm just very amazed that we have this much detail on the Nintendo Switch. What used to be a blue void background is now livened up by having a lot more detail in the back. And not only that, but also this game runs in a great 60 FPS throughout. When I first played through the game, I had a bit of a childlike adoration to it, and when I got to the Forest Maze section, I was honestly jaw-dropped because look how amazing this looks. Look at all the colors and such, it's very beautiful. And the music, oh my god! Yoko Shimomura returns for the composer for the remake, and she did a phenomenal job remixing all the soundtrack from the original game. And I'll be real for a sec, I think I prefer the new soundtrack over the original, because a lot of the music in this game just feels very majestic, especially when you get to the final areas of the game. And with that, I feel like it's time to talk about the end goal of the game. So as Mario and Co. find the 6th star they were looking for, they find themselves returning to Bowser's castle. After going for a small gauntlet area, they go up top of the castle where they fight Exor. This entity so happens to be the gateway between the Mushroom Kingdom and Smithy's world. And I like how throughout this area, you're fighting against the bosses you would fight in the earlier games, but with a muted color scheme. I really like this because it really emphasized the fact that these things you're fighting right now are pretty much unfinished versions of the ones you fight earlier. And this is where we find the heart of the world, and where we find the king of the world, Smithy, where he literally builds his entire army with his own hands with this melting pot. And with the final star in his hands, he has planned to take over the world, and Mario and Co. cannot let that happen, so it's time for the final battle. And I'll be completely honest, this is honestly my favorite boss in the game. It's fairly challenging as well. It honestly got me a bit of a struggle on what to do. And after you defeat Smithy in his first phase, he gets so furious that he destroys the floor below you, and now you're really deep inside of his own world. And also, I really love the red color scheme this boss fight has. Usually in a factory setting, a red color scheme means that everything is going to go downhill from here, and that is the case for this boss fight. And I love the main gimmick for the final boss, is that his head will constantly morph into different shapes so he can attack Mario. It is honestly a great way to end this game. And after you defeat the final blow, Smithy goes down and his entire army. And now they collected all the 7 stars. With the Star World restored and everyone's dreams can finally come true again, Geno leaves his doll body, as the star within heads back to the Star Road up above. Everyone celebrates with a special parade to know that peace has come back to the world, and that concludes Super Mario RPG. And overall, this is honestly my favorite RPG on the Nintendo Switch, ever. As I said earlier in this video, Mario did take a break from the RPG genre for the most part, so it's really good to see Mario return to this turn-based RPG genre. Even though it is a remake of a Super Nintendo game, it does more and beyond just a simple remaster. That Super Mario RPG on the Nintendo Switch is the best way to play Mario's original RPG outing. If you're a Nintendo guy and you're a fan of RPGs, I highly recommend playing this game. It just has so much good quality to it. And more importantly, we have a Geno profile pic for the Nintendo Switch Online! Oh god, yes! So yeah, play Super Mario RPG.
Super Mario RPG.
Honestly, it doesn't matter which version you get, the SNES or the brand new Switch version, just try and play this game. This is one of those games you should play at least once in your life. But honestly, I am very glad we have this remake right here. This is honestly a game that we all wish for, and it actually came true. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye.